Today we are going to take a close look at this 2005 Big Dog chopper. It's basically stock. We're going to point out a few things as they come about. First off is this stock gauge. It is working, everything's fine, but you'll notice that typically the problem is that these gaskets come loose. And so in this case what I've done is I've actually put a lot of extra sealant around there so that no moisture gets in. And the reason for that is that you're riding, you get caught in the rain, and that's happened before, and that's not a problem. You get caught in the rain and you wipe and clean your bike afterwards. But if water was to get into here with the gasket off, then it could damage your gauge here, your gauge cluster. So to just have the peace of mind, I put some really thick sealant around here. Not only does it hold the gasket in place, but also it prevents any water from coming in there. Now, if you really wanted to do this, I guess a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, you could scrape this off, put a very thin coating of adhesive on this gasket, push it in and just turn it slightly, and you should have the same effect. So let's move on. All these bars and controls are stock. The mirrors, they really have a tendency, because everything is rushing towards them, to start pitting. So let's get a little bit closer here. These are in pretty good shape, but I wouldn't say they're in show shape, because here you can see there's a little bit of a roughness on this mirror right here. What you have to do is just keep polishing it, get that dirt off so that you avoid any sort of pitting. The bars are stock, great shape. The handles, the levers here, there's no play in them. They get lubed every season, but there is a nice even friction zone here, and there's no play in that handle, the clutch handle, and then there's not going to be any play in this brake lever either. And also the brake and the throttle and the return, they get lubed as well once a season. So let's take a quick look at the paint scheme here. It's not a common Big Dog paint scheme, but it looks pretty nice, and there really are no imperfections in the paint. And let's go to the front. So everything here is stock with the headlight. This actually, I keep 4 extra bulbs just in case, but this has been going on for a while, running for a while. And here we have a closer look at the paint on the front fender, as well as the wheels. And these are stock wheels and stock forks. Nothing is leaking out of the fork seals or anything. And so now let's start getting into some more of the details here. So this is a Sifton oil filter. It is removable and very easy to clean. All you do is you take the inner component, the filter piece, soak it in some Dawn for maybe about 20 minutes. The grease flies off, dry it, put it back in, and you're good to go. Now, this charging system, the voltage regulator, the stator, etc., has been upgraded to a Compufire 32 amp, and that's a big plus for this bike, because you no longer have any worries about your charging system. These are it's 117 cubic inch, which translates into about 1950 cubic centimeters. S&S engine. It's got about 12,600,000 miles, about between 12 and 13,000 miles on it. Now I want to point out a couple things here. These are TP headers. In 2005 and 2006, Big Dog used these TP, total performance headers, or I should say rocker boxes, on top of the S&S engine. And the problem is that they will tend to flake a little bit. So here you can already see, if we get close, the beginnings of that flaking over there. So we really got to polish that and be careful with that. There's another area where the same thing is happening, actually to a slightly greater extent, and that is on this rocker box right in the front, because as you can see there, it's starting to bubble a little bit. Again, because everything coming forward towards the bike is hitting that area. So you got to make sure you watch those and keep those clean. The LEDs are placed under here, under there, and across there. And this is the button to turn on the LEDs. So when you're sitting here, you can easily reach under, feel the button, turn on your LEDs or turn them off, whichever the case. I always recommend when you're riding any bike that you put a carabiner to hold your key in place wherever that may be, so that if the key were to unfortunately fall out of the key slot, it would not, you would not lose your key, obviously. So this is a Baker 6-speed transmission. This is a Baker DSSC primary, and this guy sticking out is actually, and you can take this off quite easily, this is a positive lead, but this sheath prevents it. It's a pretty thick sheath. It prevents it from coming in contact with anything else. But if you open it, right, I can put a jump box on here for that positive lead, and then I can attach it also to somewhere on the frame, probably on this passenger foot peg, and I can jump my bike without having to take the seat off. While we're at it, let's go ahead and take a look at the seat. Seat's a 2-up seat. This also has a solo seat with a passenger pillion and the stock struts. These are all grade 8 bolts, by the way, and they need to be grade 8 bolts because you could, if you have a, let's say, a hefty passenger on the back, you don't want, thank you, you don't want too much strain on here to accidentally break these bolts. So that said, the other thing is it has the stock horn is actually very weak sounding, but it has an air horn, a big trumpet style air horn that goes in there as well, and that will be very loud. Now it also has this lead for the battery tender sticking out of it, but if you don't like the cable sticking out, those are very easy to remove off the battery posts. So coming back through here, sissy bar, this license plate here, there's actually a sort of a home fabricated bracket that replaces this upper belt guard with a side facing license plate, and that's with this bike as well. So let's go around here, take a look at the pipes. These are I guess Super Trap exhausts. Those are the stock exhausts. This is the stock air cleaner. Now in one of the pictures you'll notice there's a spike air cleaner. That's no longer with this bike, and the reason why we went back to stock on this bike is twofold. One, there's more chrome to show, but two, going back to earlier, if you do get caught in the rain, you don't want to take a chance on the rain or the water getting into the spike air cleaner, because with the spike air cleaner your filter's exposed and potentially that water could go into the engine, which you don't want. Now this year is a 2005, as we mentioned earlier, and in that year they use a Super E carb. It's an S&S carburetor, by the way. E for economical or whatever. That restricted the engine a little bit more than this upgraded carb that's in here now, which is a Super G carb. And the Super G carb upgrade also has an intake manifold, a matching intake manifold upgrade for it. So that's a very important upgrade for this bike here, so you can get more out of the engine. Now let's take another look at the rear wheel here. It's a stock rear wheel, and that's a 250 millimeter rear tire, Avon. Good amount of tread on it. Let's take a long shot from this angle, and that, my friends, is a closer look at a 2005 Big Dog Chopper.